Hello, my name is Sarah Kolzak, and for my COM 381 current events presentation, I will be discussing the representation of larger bodies in the media, specifically TV shows and movies, and popular culture. In this presentation, I will start out by giving a disclaimer about thin privilege and my place in talking about this topic today. We'll talk about diet culture and how that relates to fat phobia, defining those terms as well. And then I'll give a few examples of these representations in the media. So specifically, Sookie St. James from Gilmore Girls, Fat Amy from Pitch Perfect and Pitch Perfect 2. We'll talk about body positivity through Lizzo and popular culture in the music industry, and that those comments by Jillian Michaels earlier this year. And then we'll talk about how diet culture relates to patriarchy, and then a quick conclusion. I wanted to give a quick disclaimer right here at the beginning of the presentation that I benefit from something called thin privilege in the society that we live in, and that affects my place to talk about the topic that I'm talking about today. Thin privilege doesn't mean that I haven't had struggles with my body, but instead means that I don't face the systematic oppression that people who live in larger bodies face. I've never been to the doctor's office and told that I'm overweight or obese from a BMI chart and that I need to lose weight. I've always been able to go to a store and find clothes that are my size. But I think Christy Harrison really summarizes this concept well, of saying that you can have thin privilege and also hate your body. I don't claim to understand the experiences of fat people, but I can learn from them, recognize the struggles that I had with my own body, and move forward treating all people with kindness and respect, no matter their size. I also will only be discussing the representation of straight, white, cisgender women in the media, with the exception of Lizzo, who is a Black woman. So it's important to keep in mind that this leaves out the experiences of men and binary folks who live in larger bodies and how they're portrayed in the media and pop culture. The rampant diet culture in Western societies places a demonization on fat, gaining weight, or living in a larger body. The ideal body has changed rapidly over the years, and the weight loss industry amounts to around $33 billion per year, despite a large amount of evidence supporting the fact that diets don't work. A panel by the National Institutes of Health in 1992 found that after weight loss programs, 90 to 95% of participants regain as much as 2/3 of the amount of weight lost after 1 year, and almost all within 5 years. That means that diets have a 5% success rate after 5 years. Diet culture tells us to blame the dieter and not the diet, though. And diet culture is deeply rooted in our society. Even if you've never technically been on a diet, there are a variety of things that can disrupt your awareness of your own body surrounding your natural hunger, fullness, and satisfaction cues. Do you eat at a set meal time every day, or were you ever told to clear your plate as a child at dinner? We can't discuss diet culture without defining weight stigma or fat phobia and the way it manifests itself in our society. Weight stigma, as defined by Janet Tomiyama, one of the leading weight stigma researchers, is the social devaluation and denigration of people perceived to carry excess weight, which leads to prejudice, negative stereotyping, and discrimination towards those people. Weight stigma is also known as fat phobia, weight bias, weight-based discrimination, and fat stigma, and that's how I'll be referring to it throughout the rest of the presentation. A growing body of research shows that weight stigma is an independent health risk factor, even when controlling for BMI. For example, a 2017 study found that people with higher levels of weight stigma have more than twice the risk of cumulative stress on all systems. This puts people at greater risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and mortality. So it might not be body size, but instead stress on bodily systems in larger people that puts them more at risk for these different health factors. Now that we understand weight stigma, we can shift into discussing how fat people are stereotypically depicted and stigmatized in the media, including television, movies, and popular culture. Think about your favorite fat characters. They're typically depicted as the funny friend, the brunt of the joke, the supporting character, the platonic friend to a love interest, or in some cases, even unworthy of love. A 2012 study found that stigmatization commentary and fat humor were often verbal, directed towards another person, and often presented directly in the presence of the overweight target. Results also indicated that male characters were 3 times more likely to engage in fat stigmatization commentary or fat humor than female characters. The first example or portrayal that I wanted to talk about was Sookie St. James from Gilmore Girls. And I think that this TikTok actually does a really good job describing her
every single fat character in film and television.
The show, and then we'll talk about those examples a little bit later.
And so cold. All you have to do is call her name, and she'll be right there in a hurry. We're talking about everybody's favorite best friend in the world, Sookie St. James from Gilmore Girls, played beautifully by a young Melissa McCarthy before she was famous. I love the quiet renaissance of Sookie St. James. No, really. She's a fat woman who is just existing on television. And there's not a major plot point that's about her weight at all. Sookie's major plot points include her relationship with her job, her relationship with Lorelai, her fabulous romantic relationship with her partner, and her relationship with motherhood. This is one of the best fat characters ever. Like so many of us, she gets to just live and be. This was so far ahead of its time, and I think we owe her a lot. I want more Sookie St. Jameses on TV. Who's next?
Gilmore Girls was released in the 2000s, but was acquired by Netflix in 2016, bringing it back into popularity. Gilmore Girls is a little bit problematic for the ways that it's saturated with white privilege and white feminism, and we can talk about those in another presentation. But one thing that the show does do well is a portrayal of a fat female character. Sookie St. James, played by a young Melissa McCarthy, is an important secondary character who is Lorelai's best friend and eventual business partner in the show. Sookie's weight is never mentioned once as a major plot point throughout all 7 seasons of the show. She isn't able to do everything that we would see a person do, which shouldn't be revolutionary, but at this time, and even still today, this is an important portrayal. Sookie has character development beyond wanting to lose weight, being the funny friend, or being stuck in platonic relationships like the stereotypical portrayal of a fat person on TV. Sookie works towards career goals by perfecting her craft of cooking and love for food. Her and Lorelai open up their own inn together later in the show, and Sookie's romantic relationship is the longest romantic relationship we see in the show, actually. We see her happiness and her relationship grow in a happy and honest way. Later on, we see Sookie and her partner building a family together. I think that there's also an interesting juxtaposition in Sookie's friendship with Lorelai, as we recognize how different they look from one another, but how they support each other in similar and healthy ways. The next example that we'll discuss is Fat Amy from Pitch Perfect and Pitch Perfect 2. Fat Amy is a controversial character on if she's a good portrayal of a fat woman in the media or not. Some like that she's placed as a main character. Most of the time she claims her fatness and her name as Fat Amy, and is one of the only characters to have a romantic interest throughout the movie. While these are good points in the right direction, I believe that Amy's overall portrayal is negative. While Amy is a central character, most of her plotline is centered around humor and not who she is as a human. The size of her body is often used as a punchline or the brunt of a joke. We see this at the beginning and the end of Pitch Perfect 2 during Amy's harness stunt, which you can see here that the audience laughs at. When considering these scenes and why they seem funny, we have to think about if the same reaction would occur if someone in a smaller body were to perform the same types of stunts or jokes. And most obviously, even Amy's nickname, Fat Amy, is a large indication of her identity throughout the entire movie. While she does reclaim this title throughout the movie, it is most often used in a fatphobic way when describing her. The 2 examples discussed so far are a few years old, so I wanted to discuss the reclamation of women's bodies through pop culture, specifically through the artist Lizzo. Lizzo's music and social media center around body positivity and self-love as a Black woman in the music industry. She shows off her body in inspiring and empowering ways. Earlier this year, however, celebrity fitness trainer Jillian Michaels raised concerns about Lizzo's popularity and health. Jillian Michaels was a trainer on the show The Biggest Loser, where contestants put themselves through intense physical exercise and dieting to compete to see who can lose the most weight by the end of the show. The show is so problematic, and I could just go off about it, but I won't even begin to discuss it here. But Michael's participation in that show should already give you a good idea where she stands on the issue of body positivity. In an interview, Michael said, "Why are we celebrating Lizzo's body? Why does it matter? Why aren't we celebrating her music? Because it isn't going to be awesome if she gets diabetes. I'm just being honest. Like, I love her music, like my kid loves her music, but there's never a moment where I'm like, and I'm so glad she's overweight. Like, why do I even care? Why is it my job to care about her weight?" Here, Michaels claims that Lizzo's body shouldn't be celebrated and leans into fat stigmatization. Her statement is extremely fat phobic because it isn't Michael's job to worry or care about Lizzo's weight. It's not any of our jobs to care about Lizzo's weight or health other than her health practitioner that she trusts to give health-related advice. I would even go as far to say that it isn't any health practitioner's business to worry about her health until they drop their biases and outdated methods of defining health and adopt a health at every size philosophy. Once again, we can see the harmful effects of weight stigma here. Diet culture relates to patriarchy in the ways that it attempts to control and judge women's bodies. A study in the mid-1990s showed that 44% of women and 29% of men were actively trying to lose weight. Diet culture disproportionately affects women. The next time that you watch a movie or a TV show, analyze how the fat characters are treated by their peers, and specifically how female bodies are policed to look a certain way to have value to not only the other characters, but the plotline in general. Thank you.